Hi, my name's Pauline Glamourchak, and in 1977, when I was 11 years old, I had a near-death experience. It happened in the Mount Macedon Ranges at the picnic grounds there. It happened while I was running down a hill chasing after my friends, and I tripped on a rock, and instead of falling forward and going with the impetus, I flung myself back and apparently hit my head on a rock. Now, anticipating that I would fall, I closed my eyes tightly, but I didn't feel any pain at all. So I opened my eyes and I was in blackness. But very shortly after, I was out of my body and floating, being drawn up through the clouds. Not only that, it felt like I'd taken off a really heavy coat. It felt as though I'd peeled away layers of anxiety and every encumbrance. I just felt extremely free and blissful. I very briefly looked at my body, but I wasn't very interested in it at all. And I looked around and just took in the beautiful vista of the Macedon Ranges, which is a particularly stunning place and a spiritual place in southeastern Australia and Victoria. So here I was, floating above my body. It's getting smaller. I'm not even paying any attention to it. And suddenly I'm in a whiteout because I hit the clouds. And when I hit the clouds, I felt the sensation of cold. And so I had a sense of trepidation at that point. When I emerged from the clouds and I saw a range of clouds, it was like a cloudscape. I felt cold and I immediately thought, well, how far am I going to go? And I looked up above me. There was just space. And I thought, what am I going to be floating around in space? What's going to happen? And it seemed as soon as I thought that and wondered, this black hole appeared above me. And it was like I would describe it as a portal. But once I was in it, it was definitely a tunnel. And I travelled very fast in this tunnel. So fast that the stars were streaming by and the speed began to just create this greyness. They were no longer stars. So I had this sense of travelling very, very far. And when I was worried about how far I would go and how long I would be in this tunnel, I looked up again and I saw this speck of light. And soon enough, this light had rained into the tunnel, permeated into the tunnel. And as soon as I felt that light, I immediately had the sense that I had been there before. And this calm came over me. And this calm grew till I was completely immersed in the light, because the light had energy that was not just a visual gold patterned spectrum. It also had qualities of feeling and the emotion of this love like I'd never experienced on earth. It was a very accepting love. It's hard to understand that sense of safety. It's certainly something that's not attainable here on earth, but it was an incredible sense of safety. And this light was personal. It knew me and it loved me and it answered every question that I had. And as I became accustomed to the delight that I felt and the security that I felt in this light, I looked around and beneath me there was this group of people and they were looking up with anticipation. And so I travelled down to them and they greeted me and I realised that they were ancestors. Now, at the age of 11, I'd only lost a grandfather at that point, and that occurred when I was 3. So I didn't recognise them by name, but I knew that they were my family and they were so happy to see me as if we'd known each other all our lives. And so I really basked in this beautiful, incredible welcome that I received from them. And as that sort of occurred, I began to take in the environment, and I could see that I was in front of this large arch in this wall, this wooden door, but I could actually see over the wall. And as I looked over the wall, I saw these beautiful rolling hills and children playing, and this scene like otherworldly beauty, and just thought to myself, wow, this is incredible. And I was just so happy to arrive there. And then I noticed what I thought was the sun. And as I looked at it, I saw that the aura around it was different, and it had a different quality. It wasn't like a yellow, it was a gold, very much a gold colour, a mercurial kind of gold. And as I took in the features of it, it started travelling towards me. And as it came closer, I could see that it had a white centre. And as it came even closer, I could see that the white centre was a silhouette. And then as it came, I could see that the white centre, there was a figure emerging, and he was a man in a white robe, and he exuded energy that was incredible, and his stature was majestic, and he was very handsome. Inside of myself, I was just awestruck by him, and inside of myself I said, is this Jesus? He's really real. When I realized that it was Jesus, I said, he's really real. And as soon as I said that, he projected this laugh into me. And this laugh was just, it wasn't laughing at me, it was a delighting in me. And he filled me with that emotion of delight. Then he called me to him, and he used a name, but it wasn't my name. It was the name that he had for me. And when he spoke that name to me, a whole story unfolded with that name. And I understood the story of my ancestors within that name. And I understood that we belonged to his tribe, that I was his. And that was too much, too big a revelation. And I just found myself at his feet. I was at his beautiful feet. I was crying a lot. And when that subsided and I spoke some things to him, I looked up and I saw his foot and the sandal that he was wearing. I could see on the top of his foot was this gold hole. And as I realized that it was from the crucifixion and that the crucifixion was real, I immediately was at the scene as I looked into that hole. It's difficult to describe because it happened so instantaneously. So I'm immediately at the level of the flagstones, and I'm seeing blood dripping and water dripping on the flagstones. And as I look up from the flagstones, I can see a mutilated figure, and I realised that it was him. He was completely disfigured, unrecognisable, all of his dignity stripped. And as the gravity of it struck me, I just thought inside of myself, oh, does it still hurt? Because it was unbearable. It was just beyond imagination. And as soon as I said that and felt that compassion, he just immediately said no. And in that expression, I was just blinded by his glory light, this gold light, and found myself over the clouds. He was taking me over Jerusalem, over Israel, over these arid hills. It was like a moonscape. Nothing like I'd ever seen, and I'd never dreamt of flying, so this experience of flying was immediately erased what I'd seen because it was so alive. Then he placed me next to this woman who was standing on a platform above this crowd of people, and she was an older woman, very nondescript, but she had her face covered and she had like a very black hair. Her skin was aged, she'd obviously been in the sun, and as I took her in, I took in every detail about her life. She worked in the fields and she had a very hard-working life, and I could see that by her hands. But then when I felt her sorrow, I recognised that he'd taken me to stand next to his mother, and I realised that he'd shown me that, no, it didn't hurt anymore, but this still hurt him, that he'd hurt his mother, or that his crucifixion had hurt her. And it's such revelation, so many revelations that he gave me as to his nature when I was with him. He told me that it was his glory to die for the world and that he died for the entire world. And I, being a Catholic girl, said, the whole world hasn't had these sacraments. And he laughed, But he imbued to me the importance of having compassion for every living creation of God's, having respect and honour towards animals. And it was a very deep and surprising message, that this instruction about love and compassion. Anyway, then he took me to sit on this big, flat, black rock. And he was to my right side, I was to his left. And I remember looking at my knees dangling over the edge of this rock into space, and my knees were next to his knees. And I remember just thinking, I just want to be with you here forever. Below us there was a nebula that was forming, and I just was overcome with this longing to stay with him. Sensing that, he said, "Look here, my child," and he waved his hand in front of us. And as he waved his hand, there was a book appeared in the energy traces of his hand. And this book tilted towards us, and there was some writing on the first page, but I can't recall what it was. And this was like one of those old-fashioned slide movies, fast moving. And I had empathy and was involved with every character in it, I didn't recognize it as my life review. I didn't recognize my parents in it, because everybody looked extremely, so beautiful. And I understand now that he'd shown me how he sees us, that it was his, I was looking through spiritual eyes. And he was only showing me the most beautiful moments until it came to this argument that these two young girls had. And I recognized the argument. And so I recognized that it was my life review. I'd hurt this girl. I later took her to be my godmother when I went for my sacrament of confirmation, when I was a practicing Catholic. So I'd hurt her, and I felt her hurt, and I was mortified because I felt it so intensely. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm living all wrong. I didn't get it, And I said to him, I don't know what life is about. Tell me, if I can't defend myself, I really don't know how to live, It's a really hard world out there. You don't know. And now, I realize he'd just shown me and told me to have compassion for people who hated him. And here I was telling him that he didn't know. But he told me life is about love. And I said, yeah, but it doesn't work that way. It's not like that. And then he told me, your life will be on whatever you focus on. That's what creates your life, your focus. What you look at, what you look to, what you imagine, that's what you create. And I kind of was still wrapped up in what had just happened. I guess it didn't really sink in, but I had kind of worldly imaginings and found the information interesting. But I still didn't want to be parted from him, and I let him know that, and he just said to me, I will never leave you. You'll never be parted from me. And still I was, no, but I just want to stay here with you. And so he showed me a holographic image of this beautiful young man, and I understood that this was going to be in my future life. I thought it was my husband, but as time went on, I recognized my son, that he'd shown me his son, my son. And when I had said to him, is this my husband? He didn't share any information. He didn't say yes or no. He just was very quiet. And then he showed me some other scenes, and I said to him, this looks like a wonderful life, but I still hadn't decided to go back. And he said to me, yes, it is. But there was this flash of sadness, and as soon as I saw the flash of sadness, I realized either I'm going to be disappointing him if I don't go back, or there was some kind of disappointment. So I agreed immediately. And as soon as in my heart I agreed, he gently pushed me back, and I was returned to the consciousness, or semi-consciousness, of my very heavy, constrictive, throbbing headache body. I had this beagle had come up and was licking my right temple, and I had this spinal fluid or brain fluid coming from my right ear, and I didn't recognize anybody at all. But the first words I spoke were, "I've just been with Jesus. Jesus is real. Jesus is real. You've got to believe me. Jesus is real." Anyway, I was then confronted with this logic from this person that I didn't know, that, "Oh, you were only gone for a few minutes," when I sort of expanded on my story. And for me, that didn't make sense because it seemed that I was there for hours. Anyway, my parents bundled me up and took me to the closest doctor and asked me to retell my experience to him. And as I did, as I finished, he completely disappeared and he looked at them and said, "This is called confabulation. She has had a traumatic brain injury, and this is what happens when there's brain damage, and you must keep an eye on her." And they gave them instructions about how to, in which instance to take me to the emergency room. And so I knew that I wasn't believed. And so I compartmentalized the experience and just thought, really doubted my perceptions for 45 years. And until I had another near-death experience, and that one confirmed to me that it was real. And after that one, in 2015, on the operating table, I had an experience with negative entities who were trying to pull me to come with them. And when I said I was waiting for Jesus Christ, I just fell back when I realized that it was an NDE. I fell back into the blackness. But when I awoke, I could see everybody with those spiritual eyes that Jesus had shown me in my life review. So I started researching and learnt more about near-death experiences, became a counsellor, and now I support people in overcoming trauma and in integrating their near-death experiences, because often there is trauma wrapped up with the experience, and it often happens to people who have experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. I take it as a gift from God, and my life has really changed, not since the experience, but since integrating the experience. So I would say to anybody who's had a near-death experience, to be sure to integrate it, because it's, for me, it's become the cornerstone experience of my life, and it's changed my life. It's enriched my life in ways that, I can't begin to describe. It opens up a new dimension spiritually, and it certainly helps our soul to get through the challenges in life. So I would encourage everyone to integrate. I thank you for watching, taking the time to watch, and I hope that this testimony has blessed you.